People often destroy their fat loss goals before dinner by picking and snacking before dinner. Some people aware of the process, some aren't, but nearly no one plans on actually doing this. Here's what happens. Often at the end of the day, when you're at your most hungry, when you're at your most tired state, you will come home, feel like I haven't sat down, and you'll just end up picking at things before you actually get into dinner. Furthermore, the food environment around it only facilitates it. People often hang out the kitchen or just simply hanging out there before they start cooking. You're constantly around food when you're in this mentally tired and hungry state. It might often start as a taste test. A little something, the food hits your palate, but then something interesting starts to happen. Once the food actually hits your tongue, your brain starts to orientate itself to a state of, I'm trying to take in more food. I'm aware that I'm in an eating state as opposed to a non-eating state. And then you end up looking for more. People can often relate to this sensation of coming home from work in their early years, of coming home after school. I know so many people that can relate to coming home and not committing to like a hardcore meal, but raiding the cupboard for snacks. Here's something that people don't tend to recognize that happens. Often when you're the first little bit of food when you come back that's unplanned, it can be registered as a first mini break in your food of the day, or just setting the stage for I'm in a snacking state. This is the kind of thing that can then lead on to the late night snacking, not even realizing that actually started earlier in the day when you had that first little invite of let's take the off switch. Here's the thing, if you eat 400 calories in the snacking picking process before dinner, that's 400 calories that could have had other effects, either more direct fat loss, which we'll get into, or even just a better, larger food choice for dinner. So when chatting to clients about different meal prep recipes, often the difference between two different meals they might choose could be 200, 300 calories. So for example's sake, they might not choose a 700 calorie dinner, which they really enjoy, which uses cheaper ingredients, which is something the whole family will like, and instead will choose a 500 calorie meal. Again, just a 200 calorie difference if I said that correctly. Whereas what they tend to do, even while choosing that 500 calorie option, is munch on 200, 300, 400 calories in that snacking process. Suddenly you could have had all the upside of things before, cheaper, more enjoyable, all that different stuff, by just correctly eliminating this snacking process, which doesn't even give you much satisfaction anyway. So here's what to do instead. Here's what I found with myself and others. First thing is pre-portion on the weekend if you need to. It might sound incredibly simple, but the decision-making process that you have under your tool belt on the weekend when there's less stress, you're not as tired, maybe not as hungry, is a better skill set to be leaning on than the after work, you're tired, you're fatigued effect. The second thing is just to be aware that around this time, you're probably going to be hungry or at least looking for a debrief kind of meal. You might have had your last lunch at 1 or 2 p.m. or a snack at 4 or 5 p.m., whatever it is. But there's still that interim period before dinner. And often that's the stage of the day where there's less stuff coming in. There isn't the kids yelling, there isn't the work stress, there isn't all these different things. And that's why, one of the reasons why it's easier to consume more stuff there. Speaking of the awareness thing, there is a common phrase, you probably would have heard of it, which is don't shop while hungry. And it's a good phrase and there's some merit to it, but I'd instead like to encourage you to have another form of the same framework, which is don't start cooking if you are really hungry. Often this is a stage where you're again in the kitchen, so you're in the right food environment. You're at your most hungry, you're surrounded by all the food in the cupboard next to you, or even just overly picking at the meal, pretending that you're trying to get your Nonna's recipe right. And often that's the stage where you have the most breaks. So you are kind of bringing a knife to a gunfight by being in that environment at that time. So if you can, just try and get rid of any unnecessary standing in the kitchen. You're just waiting in what feels like a really tempting environment. So if you can go off and do some errands, if you can put the washing on, get your clothes ready for the next day, whatever it is, often it's just time you're not spending thinking, oh, should I have this? Should I not? As the mental fatigue starts to break at you, your willpower starts to be eroded. Other things people can do is chew gum, drink warm water just so your mouth is doing something, often ends up priming digestion anyway, or even put a timer on, which can again speak to the whole awareness thing. Here's the other maths equation that can hit hard to hear and how much this actually might be costing you. If you are having 500 calories extra a day of snacking, that arguably not enjoying or feeling satiated by. With roughly a kilo of fat being 7,000 calories, that means that 500 calorie snack each day could be costing you 1 kilogram of fat loss every 2 weeks. You extend those numbers across the year, you're now looking at 26 kilograms of potential fat loss you could have had. Even if you half that and just choose to have some of those calories be extra food for dinner, you're still looking at 13 kilograms of fat loss across the year. That is a huge amount for people, often well beyond the number they actually choose to have for their goals. So it really speaks to getting this right. So with getting this right, it just does mean you can have larger dinners, more enjoyable dinners, cheaper dinners, dinners that are more enjoyable with the family, better overall results, better balance, more satiating meals. Because here's something that can be quite important. The calories that you don't track are often more important than the ones that you do track when it comes to limiting your fat loss. Thanks for watching. Like and please comment if this is something that you can relate to or something you feel like you can improve. Hopefully the commenting should help the algorithm, from what I understand, to share this to more people that actually might be struggling with this. So thank you for watching.